So I have two. My first question is for both of you, and it's around when we talk about enabling more women-led businesses to scale globally. What do you think? Sorry, I'm going to say this. We, as a group, decided that we're going to open up some of the questions to the general public just to keep it more interesting and more engaging. So you're just not listening, sitting down and listening to us speak. But the first question for my panelists is this. When we talk about enabling more women-led businesses to scale globally, what is the single biggest barrier you see today, and what practical shift would make the biggest difference? Ada?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, wow. Okay. Um, yeah, I think that the barrier everyone thinks I mean, that's not what I'm going to say because it seems like a cliche answer to say that it's capital. I think the biggest barrier would be credibility infrastructure. And the reason why I say this is women are constantly trying to prove that they have what their male counterparts already have been easily assumed to have when it comes to international trade. And that creates what I would call a confidence capital, where women now over prepare their products. They do not leverage as much as they can on their existing network, which doesn't allow them to scale as aggressively as their male counterparts would. And I mean, we'll look at it from the angle of people requesting for grants or even positioning for equity. And I would charge us today to actually change that narrative. And that narrative is just as simple as even the language of saying that we are supporting small businesses in quotes. Let's change that language instead to saying that we're investing in global scale ups. And as we continue to change the language, we continue to break those barriers that women constantly face today in international trade. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you for saying that it's not just capital. Yes, I think capital, like she's mentioned, is a cliche, or it's the most common answer. I wouldn't say cliche, but most common answer. Justin, do you agree with her?
Um, well, first of all, thank you for breaking the ice. Thank you for breaking the ice. It is true, capital is one thing, but I also think it's important to have a unique selling point. I am not into products. I provide service. I'm an architect. And so I was thinking about how I would answer this question. I'm an architect who works in Nigeria, but from working in Nigeria, I've been able to provide international service. So when I think about how I've approached it, I think about the fact that I've been able to provide a service that is desired irrespective of where I'm coming from. And it's a service that is translatable in other markets. If you're selling products, the question would always be, are you answering, are you providing something that the market requires? Just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's also a marketable idea or an idea that one that can work in your market or can work in another market. So I think that's also very important to really understand who your client is, who your target market is, and make sure that you're providing the right product for that market.
Yeah. So my audience, does anyone have an answer to what they think is the single biggest barrier that women face in export today, and what practical shifts we could make to make a difference? Does anyone advise?
Yeah.
Oh.
So my name is Tosin Alabi, DLM Advisory, DLM Capital Group. So I think a huge thing is access to information. I think it will make a huge difference. For example, the grants you're speaking about, even the capital you're speaking about, if you had access to that information, it would make it easier for you to start up a business, grow a business, and expand the business. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Susan. And I definitely agree. with all the answers I received today. So it's credibility, structure, unique selling points, and then access to finance. And I think we can tie it all together by saying that if you have access to information, you then get to know how to tell your story and project what your USP, like Tosin mentioned, is, and then you're able to also create the environment and the tribe that you need to grow and to gain credibility in the sector you're in. So, Tosin, I'm taking my next question. You're taking my next questions. Many businesses have strong products or services, but struggle to move from local success to international markets. In your view, what does true export readiness look like? And you've already started answering the questions.
Yeah.
True export readiness. I think it's packaging. Please do not underestimate your packaging. It is very, very important. What you put out is what you will attract. As an architect, I photograph every single project, even if it's a shoebox. And I do it professionally because I know that having that documentation will mean it will be very easy to go to a new client and show what I've done. And that's ultimately visibility and how I present what I do.
That's very true. Because I work with SMEs and I always tell them the story is what matters. How you sell yourself is what matters. And I know as women, we're not used to having to sell ourselves. We're always told we're better seen, not heard. Our packaging is never really up to par because we don't really focus on it. We just want to do the work and be recommended for the work and appreciated for the work we're doing. But like Tosin says, we need to be able to package yourself and sell yourself nicely. And Ada, the question is,
Yeah, I agree with what you said as well. And let me look at it from the bank side. And I think export readiness is a mindset shift. It's for me, it's the transition of a business from a founder-led business to a systems-led organization, where now you have documented processes and you have reliable humans who can now take charge of the business even when you're not there. True readiness for me is when a business has a wonderful supply chain that even when they have a 10x order for items or products or whatever it is, they're able to handle it and handle it in such a way that the founder doesn't even have to be a part of that operational process or the shipments that takes place. And that way you can tell that that business is also ready. It's also when a business stops asking questions like, can we sell abroad? And now they're asking questions like, what markets are we going to sell in? And why are we going to those markets? It's also understanding the lingo as well, because, you know, there's what we call lenders risk and you approach the banks for capital. She mentioned information, very, very important. It's how our male counterparts get ahead of us when it comes to this kind of business. We need to understand. You need to understand pricing and understand whether your pricing can absorb what we call currency risk. You also need to understand that you have proper documentation that will pass through customs audits. You also need to also understand that the fact that you have an operational team that works end to end, that whether or not you're there, there's an order that you're not expecting, you're able to fulfill it end to end. So a lot of businesses honestly think that you're not ready, but I think they're more ready than they actually know. And it's because they can't see the pathway. There are people who just there locally making their groundnuts or cashew nuts. They're not thinking about the fact that, okay, this could even serve the diaspora markets, and like, there's a certain way I can position my business to access these extra opportunities. So we have to do the work first. We have to understand the language. We have to also work with partners, financial bodies as well, who can also help. There are advisory services that you can get when your business begins to scale, when you want to expand your businesses. And I mean, because of that, I think that it is more or less, it's not a visibility problem anymore. It's more of a capability problem. And we can solve that problem if we put in the work. So you need to understand first everything about your business. You need to also work with partners that can also put you online so that when you're requesting these grants, when you need this support for your businesses, you're able to speak the language and they have confidence in you. Lenders always look for confidence in the business. They look for readiness. There are different things we look out for, but I'll just stop here. So thank you.
And I just answered my next question.
Sorry.
But that's fine because it's a deep question. It's a complex question I want to ask you now. From a financial services perspective, and you've already started to give an answer, what makes a business truly ready for international trade? But also, what financial products or support structures should women entrepreneurs explore if they want to transition from occasional exporting to sustainable global trade?
Okay. Yeah. I would tone it down on the banking lingo, but I think for us, you look at, I would say, let me bring it down to 3 bankable pillars for businesses: visibility and clear discipline documentation, verification, and velocity, and I would say understanding of tools that you need. So for visibility, yeah, a lot of businesses, not when it comes to data, financial records keeping and whatnot, they do not have that clear pathway or clear digitized documentation that tells a story to even a foreign counterpart that has not met you before. Look at your documents and they already understand what this business needs. For verification, it's really as simple as making sure that your business has the basics. I would say things like cash flow, tax compliance, inventory tracking. All those things are very important. And I'm saying this, I know in an economics class, but really and truly, when you want to approach bodies that this is what they do every day, you need to be able to understand and speak to. It's what sets you apart, it's what exposes you to international trade. And I mean, when you have those things, they should also be able to verify them by third-party institutions. Right? That data, that clear data that you have, beyond having a high turnover, beyond having a good balance sheet, you need to have that proper documentation. So, and it should be verifiable. And for veracity and understanding your instruments, I think that every good business should have a proven track record. The track record could be as simple as being able to move your products from production to port with less than significant lag. That puts confidence in the business itself. And that's where I would say transaction financing comes in, trade financing comes in as a mechanism for the business. So it could be a credit letter, it could even be invoice discounting, which would come in at any stage during your export journey. But being able to approach an institution to say that this is what I need for my business, you understand the products and why you need the products, gives us confidence in you, and that's how we're able to judge that a business is ready for international trade expansion or international trade business. So yeah, from a banking perspective, these are the things, simple things, not so complex because it's just English, to be honest. But if you understand it, it's easy for you to make a case for your business. Thank you.
Round of applause for that, please. I'm going to open up the question to the crowd again. What financial products or support structures should women entrepreneurs explore if they want to transition from occasional exporting to sustainable global trade? Oh, some hands at the back. I can take 2 answers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if this is an answer, but it's sort of adding to the, the discussions. So, and I'll use it like a little bit of a short case study. So, a company, a woman-led business has done everything. They even have the global orders. They have some grant or financing to support. The basic thought is there. But another of the time where the sustainability is challenged, I believe, is around the human resource, personnel. You can do everything right. But the day, maybe that production manager doesn't turn up, or your staff send essential for that business doesn't turn up, and it happens to reference, everything falls, but you can't do it alone. So some of the things we need to be discussing as well is how do we enable sustainability? What are we doing to actually build that pipeline of ready staff, of trained skills? There's pockets everywhere, but there's no sort of coming together. There you have a pool of understanding about what businesses really need. Practical solutions for businesses. Where can I go all of a sudden when that sewing machine operator doesn't get, do they have those sort of pools? Is there anything that's going to happen? Those, I think, are essential for us to also consider.
Thank you.
Perhaps not a complete response to that, but one of our priority files and a file that's near and dear to my heart, as some of you in the room know, is our education file, where we have Canadian institutions, both at the tertiary and secondary level, including polytechnics and community colleges, that are extremely active and quite knowledgeable about the Nigerian market, ready to partner on workforce development, ready to build articulation agreements, to essentially help with exactly what you mentioned, training the workforce of tomorrow, supporting digital literacy skills, AI, trade schools. And in a conversation that we had between Canadian and Nigerian institutions in this very room a few months ago, one of the topics that came up was the perception of community college in Nigeria as it compares to Canada. In the Canadian ecosystem, our colleges, again, which have been very active in the market, whether it be through student recruitment or through these types of partnerships, have such strong connections to industry. In fact, many of the industry partners in their sectors are on advisory boards for the development of their curriculum, and that's something that we hope to kind of expand in this market, is really recognizing that when it comes to job readiness, it's really through the college system. And I would love to see that model adopted here to not only reduce that, perhaps negative perception of going to college versus going to university, but recognizing that it's an opportunity to fill the gaps that many of us know or have experienced when it comes to workforce development.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful contributions. Tosin, I am now looking to you. And my question for you is, when we talk about trade, we often think of commodities and goods, sometimes services, but Africa's creative industries, architecture, fashion, film, design, are also, as we've all seen, very powerful global exports. How can African female creatives better position their work as globally competitive exports?
Say it again?
How can African female creatives better position their work as globally competitive exports? Think Aerostar. Let's see what's happening.
I think it goes back to what I had said before. It's really about positioning and packaging. I think if you want to export your service, how would you deliver it at home first? How would you want to receive an exported service if you were on the other side of the world? That's how you have to think about it. You almost have to put yourself in the eye of the consumer. I'm very proud to say that so much of our creative industries are doing so well. We have Nigerian fashion designers who are very regularly exporting today. I saw something on Instagram the other day about a lady who makes dresses that people pay $10,000 for. And she's very happy. She has a very good business model, but she started her business here. And she started it here by understanding her consumer. She was selling an aspiration that you would look amazing in this dress. That is the same whether it's here or on the other side of the world. So I think, it's great to think about how to export, but you always have to think of yourself as a consumer. And people are people everywhere. And if you resonate well in this environment and it's a universal want, then it becomes easier to translate on the other side of the world. But having visibility that they see that you do this is also very important. So you build the awareness of what you have at home, but you ensure that you put yourself on platforms where you have strong visibility that is global. We really do live in a global village today. Everyone knows what everyone is doing on the other side of the world, whether it's film, fashion, arts, and so much of what we're seeing as the benefits in Nigeria today is because there is a democratic process of information transfer now. And so really what I'm saying is that the world is your oyster. If you present it well and you have something that is desirable, it will go. It will move.
Very true. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to that, because when we say this and we try and inspire young girls and we inspire the girls in universities who are just starting their careers, and then what they always say is, "I don't have money." Yeah. "Oh, but I don't have money. But I don't have time." And it's all and
You must have time. Oh.
yeah.
If you don't have money, you must have time.
And I want to bring us back to the access to finance conversation, because it's one thing to have an idea and to have the internet to, propagate your ideas and your products, right? But it's another thing to have the money to make it, because we do live in a world that chases aesthetics, right? And a lot of these creators, they always complain about not having the right tech or the right camera or the right subscription, and it all boils down to not having money. Again, for both of you actually, how do we create the structures, or we make them aware of the tools that are available just beyond money, or just also money, because there are grants and there are there's so many people providing money and finance in every sector actually. So how do we get them to change that mindset of we don't have money?
So I want to say this because he's the money woman. But I think it's very important that people remember to start small. There is nothing wrong with starting small. My business started in my guest bedroom in my house. By the way, I have a small clip. I've just been made a honorary fellow of the Canadian Royal Canadian Institute of Architects. And I'll be going to Toronto in May for that. I did not nominate myself. I was nominated. But this business started in my guest bedroom. Yes, money is important. Money is important for a lot of the infrastructure, but the spirit of a business starts from here. And the tenacity, the drive, the energy, and also being innovative. I'm an architect. I don't have an in-house lawyer. I outsource certain things. You have to work with little to achieve much, and you have to be innovative. Yes, there are some things that you will have to spend money on, but the problem is when you start with thinking, I don't have money, so I'm not going to do anything, then you also limit yourself to the possibilities of what you can achieve, which is also very important. So I hand over to
Yeah. And I mean, I was going to totally take off my banking hats and really just dive into most of what she just said, because at the end of the day, we're talking about young people who we look at as the early stage of whatever it is they're coming up with. And the truth is, the system is a bit unfair to them because, I mean, banking, We look at your basic. Some of us have not even separated business from personal finances. I'm an elect kind of thing for you to access simple small credit and tenor to pay back and all that. And I mean, we're just thriving on an idea. So I think the most underestimated form of help capital that you can receive aside from the founder's capital is really family and friends, people who believe in your dream. Those are like your first your first cheerleaders really. You have an idea, people are looking at it, and you can really say, okay, this is what do you think about this thing I have. Do you think it is viable? Do you think it makes sense? And somebody's like, I don't think it's bad, and then most people have a story of some level of support from family and friends. And so I'm saying this because let's not underestimate that part really. Family and friends, for when you're starting out the business. And what we do in the eye of the learner really is, even when you come to us, we don't turn you away. The goal really is to make that business financeable. And so what we look at more is creating a structure. So that's where you see things like, have you registered the business? Do you have your team? Those things that make a business credit worthy, and if we go down to tech, what has tech done for the most basic kind of lending, even for people who just have a business name? When I say business name, no CAC, whatever it is. There is what we call a microcredit kind of product. And it's pretty basic, right? Digital financial companies, your OPay, MoneyPoint, and VBank. The kind of things that we do is would look at a transaction history, really. Your business name, just selling to ABAB. And then that transaction history enables you to even get scored. And before you even ask for the loan, we're saying, okay, you can actually access this. That's the sweetener. That's what technology does. Instead of you walking down to the bank, looking for who your account of, these people don't have these things. And we're trying to make that process seamless, end to end. It's not perfect, but it's one of the things that financial partners can do for people who are up and coming, breaking those barriers that enable them to access simple things like credit or capital for their business. So yeah, that's it from my own end.
Very sad to close this panel, but I have one last question for my panelists, and it's actually a rapid fire question. First thing that comes to your head. If you could implement one policy, partnership, or industry initiative tomorrow that would significantly increase the number of women-led businesses exporting from Nigeria, and that's exporting in every way, what would it be? Listen.
Please say the question again.
If you could implement one policy, partnership, or industry initiative tomorrow that would significantly increase the number of women-led businesses exporting from Nigeria, what would it be? Policy, partnership, or industry initiative?
I think some kind of base funding based on specific types of businesses, I think would be beneficial.
How much?
Depends on what the business is, but a base funding that encourages people of a certain type of business and obviously gender,
Yeah.
so that they know that it's for them. Because sometimes people don't go forward because they don't think that they will ever get it. But if it's clearly targeted, it's like a grant system that is for people of a certain age group. Once you start to see the stats that relate to you, then obviously you think you have a chance. And so you'll be inspired to then apply. There are so many women who want more than where they find themselves and are very hardworking. Women are exceptionally hardworking and an amazing multitaskers. Please, let's all clap for ourselves. Go ahead. And I think if it's clearly targeted for women and they can see how they can fit in, I think it would definitely work.
Ada?
I'm going to still closest answer, really. And again, it's policy related. If I were to, if I was able to implement something, it would be some level of a mandatory gender-led policy procurement. And really, this is really going to be targeted at women-led businesses, but it would be that they are able to get a percentage of exports and supply contracts. And this would be for certified women-led businesses in Nigeria. I think that that would create a market pool. And this market pool, it would be bigger than any training program can replicate. The truth is that Nigerian women are ready. They're not waiting. These women are competing. They're trading already. They're already in the markets. Like she said, we are very hardworking. So this already exists. What they need is some level of support. Support from businesses, from financial institutions, from, the Canadian Commission too as well. Different bodies really can support these women, but what that support does for them is that they are able to scale and break the barriers that currently exist to international trade. So yeah, if I were to do that, that would be what I would push. Thank you.
So if I was to sum up what both of them said, we want laws that make it mandatory that women get some kind of contracts, the percentage of the export contracts going out, so like a local content law for women set aside for women.
Yes.
And then, but they would also have base funding to do the businesses that are earmarked for these, earmarked essentially for these exports. I'm so honored to have led this panel. Thank you so much to Ms. Tosin Oshino, and good luck in your fellowship.
Thank you.
Good Lord.
And thank you so much, Ms. Adatugo Ebanji. And thank you to everyone who listened and contributed and made this panel as engaging as I wanted it to be. Have a lovely day.
Good one.